Okay, let's look at an incredibly important site in ancient Egypt. This is formerly known as Tomb UJ. You can find it listed under that and information about it. But this ancient tomb here is one of the first leading into the actual dynasties of the ancient Egyptians. So it's more important than people give credit to. And of course, they always give a constant credit to this exact moment when Narmer shows up and so on, which I've got another video showing you ideograms and things connected to. But it was already kind of going on well before. And of course, there are people pre-dynastic, and King Scorpion we'll talk about soon and so on too. But this is an incredible, important site in ancient Egypt. And you can see these tombs that were found here. Got another video coming out showing you the first people that actually tried to excavate this, and that they kind of ruined it because in that time excavation was more of a destruction and see what you can find situation. But then Sir William Flanders Petrie came on after that, disgusted with what had happened. And of course, this is the first idea of looking through ruins and not trying to ruin everything whenever you look at ruins, and try to even get an idea of what was going on. But that's for a separate video. Here you can see on the far left-hand side there's Kasik Kimwe's tomb that's been shown there. And I've got a video too where people are claiming that, due to ancient writings and so on too, that this guy was effectively a giant. Well over 6 foot tall in a time whenever people were around 5.5 foot tall. So that's kind of important too. But you can also see there's Ka and Sumerket, but then Din, which we all know about, Jed, Merenith, Anjadib, but then peribsen, Seth peribsen, here in the start of the second dynasty. So these are real important because they connect through that time to people of the earliest dynasties such as Narmer, Ka, and Hor Aha. And Tomb J is really known about this time here, but J is actually shown to be slightly over here. And there's a huge set of blocks that are all over here and worked stone that shows you there was something much more important here. In fact, looking at from overhead here, you can actually see that there are escarpment areas and mounds and things that apparently people still haven't tried to excavate and find out all what is here. And one important one that you can even see in the video are these step type appearances here and what looks like was above ancient boat burials. I did a video a couple of years ago about all these ancient boat burials and what they show and find, but this easily could be one dating back to even of the earliest of dynasties, showing you they already had that idea going on. So looking into this site here in this Tomb UJ area, they were able to dig through this, and it's really not a huge complex like you would think of, but of course during this time it's the biggest complexes that we actually have of the earliest pharaohs. And it shows you here in a topographical map where it all lays out, but it also shows you in this map that there are a lot of other tombs that are shown here that aren't really mentioned and are apparently covered back up with sand again. So it looks like we may have to go through that same situation again. But at this place, it's pretty darn important. And there were found over 400 jars, but when they found these jars, they're not actually Egyptian jars. These are jars from as far north as being in the upper Levant area, showing you there's a large amount of trade that went on between these people. But also found at the site here are a lot of these tabs that end up going to this, and we've had another video about this showing, well, the origins of language and written language, by the way, because these are somewhat phonetic symbols and other symbols seem to be connected with places. which if you look into it, they're connected to cities that were connected to gods. And so whenever these Phoenician type people were doing all this trading back and forth, they would put a symbol on there. They'd either have a symbol that looked like Horus, or a symbol that looked like Thoth, or a jackal, or another bird, or so on, and a shepherd's hook and things like that. And because of connections, these show that they were trading much throughout ancient Egypt, some of which are connected to cities that we know of that are way far south in Egypt, all the way into the Nubia type area and up towards the cataracts. Others go much farther down. And each one of these symbologies here that go onto it are just one simple thing, but it's meant to, it seems, just have the first few initials or name that would go along with the city. And because all these people that were working and trade with each other kept up with it. A lot of these tabs are made out of plated ivory. So it's not like they were made to be cheap in any way. And it shows you kind of like they had a seal on all of these trades that go back and forth. This pottery is not unknown to people, but it's rarely referred to as being Levantine type of pottery and so on. And people have tried to make all kinds of different connections on this idea. But also found in this same tomb area is a solid ivory staff, a shepherd's hook, if you will, showing you connections. But that's not an unknown connection, for the shepherd's staff that's shown here is carried all the way from pre-dynastic times all the way through. You can understand that complex, although later shepherd's hooks, if you will, or crooks, weren't actually made out of solid ivory like that. So different things found during different times in the Egyptians and so on, and one thing that they kept for one reason or not. But in doing so, we have all of these tabs here, and a lot of people have made connections that there are scorpion listed there and so on too, and this connects to the ancient scorpion king of old, who you might recognize from the Scorpion King and the Egyptian movie that was done about so. But here's just one of those epitaphs that show that also. So in trying to date these, they've given a little span that goes on here, but some of it shows that this concept was going on hundreds of years before the supposed farming or founding of Egypt by Narmer. We'll look at that later, because all of these ancient kings back then were attested to being like ancient creatures that were fierce and so on too. And you'd think, yeah, well, hippos and all this other type stuff, and Horus is connected with the sun and so on, but how could a scorpion be so considered in that group? Well, if you look into it, the ancient Egyptian scorpions were quite venomous, caused a huge amount of problem with people. The zodiac was even given this nomenclature because of that fact and its power. Just like snakes and so on, there's a venom attached to this guy. And if you were pretty much allergic to things like bee stings and so on too, this could easily kill you. So not something that's just willy-nilly or whatever off here. You're named after a bug. Well, if you tried to make fun of the people for being named after a bug, they'd probably capture you and make Scorpion kill you, and as you were dying, you figure out, maybe I should have shut the hell up. So here's a depiction of that scorpion type king that's known, and it's of the earliest of dynasties here, and showing you that there are connections hooked up to all kinds of things. And though this isn't so grandiose, and this is hundreds of years before the pyramids, and a few dynasties, of course, before the pyramids started being created, which are primarily in late 3rd and 4th dynasty and through that time. We've shown a lot of videos where there are blue-eyed Egyptians and their statues that were at that time, and you can look at the writing that was here during this time and starting it out. But then all of a sudden there's cuneiform writing, which is very much related to the ancient Sumerian writing and the people of the whole Fertile Crescent that had this going on. But also preemptive to that, we see in all of these other places an ideographic type writing, some of which is phoenetic, which hooks up to the Phoenicians and so on, and the heralds of people who brought about a written language that we understand today. Phonetics actually works up to the idea that A is for apple, B is for ball, C is for cat, if you will. And so we have letters that stand for things, and then we hook it all the way up. It's what we have in our modern linguistics today that we're currently using and listening to. Kind of amazing. Just another input that I thought I'd throw in here of this earliest of dynasties and what's known as Tomb UJ. Have another video that has connectives coming onto that shortly, so be on the lookout for it. Let me know what you think down below. Peace.